1, 2,
Standing
go.
by.
Hey, everybody, you're listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
And we are your hairy heavy homos to talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy heavy homo to listen in.
Did y'all hear about Penguin Random House and Diamond?
Holy shit. Okay, yes. Good
segue. Oh.
Not an unintended, not a bad segue in this instance. Yeah. Man, it has been a bad week, news-ish, but it has been a bad week for anybody who works at Diamond, and now anybody who were using Diamond to still get their Marvel books or their IDW or their distillery, or anything that Penguin Random House distributes. Because as of today, Wednesday, May 21st, Penguin has announced that they are no longer going to be distributing any of their publishers through Diamond, and that also includes any toys as well that Penguin Random House provides, and anything else, any publication, books. Doesn't matter if it's comics, books, toys, anything that Penguin distributes is no longer going to be able to be purchased or ordered through Diamond distribution. So, this is something, but to be honest, we've been kind of thinking that that's the eventual way that the whole PRA, Penguin Random House relationship with the distributors was going to go. That was like the end point that was planned a couple years ago when this happened, when Marvel jumped ship. So it's just, I think now that it's here, it's it's surprising. So as of June, I think it's June 25th is the end date. So up until June 25th, Diamond will still be, you can still order, they'll still ship and distribute, but after June 25th, no more Penguin Random House, and that's Marvel, IDW, Boom, I believe, Distillery, Tokyo Pop, and a couple other concerns.
So, yeah, I like the way you just described it as being like something that was almost predictable, because interestingly enough, in fact, you did predict it. So we have a group chat with a former guest and friend, Brian Newberry, and so we were all talking about that, and he was saying, yeah, didn't we just have this exact call this exact scenario?
Yeah.
And it's true.
I think the thing that was a little bit shocking was how accelerated it was. Yeah. I thought that they would give at least, to provide as a token of goodwill, the new regime a couple of months, at least at least 2 or 3 quarters, 2 or 3 financial quarters to see how things were going. They just said, no go.
I feel really bad for their, I legitimately mean this. I feel really bad for their lawyers. That would not have been the phone call that I wanted to deal with this afternoon.
No. And this is depending on who's actually left in any of the Diamond offices. Obviously, Ad Populum and Universal have their people in place that are handling a lot of this stuff. But, over this past weekend, entire, divisions and departments, all of their staff have been laid off.
Yeah.
Fulfillment being one of them. That's kind of expected, unfortunately. But troubleshooting, customer care, anything that's customer facing, sales, and probably one of the bigger things. And I talked to Tony, who runs the comic shop that I go to in Charlotte, he was surprised to hear that basically the entire support staff for the point of sale system is also now gone. They're gone. They completely wiped them out. I think there might be a couple token people left, but everybody who can provide support, whether it's patches or updates or troubleshooting or fixes or any kind of, hey, I've got an issue with with my pool list using your system. I've got an issue with my point of sale system where everything in my store is run through.
Yep.
That's now, there's nobody there to help. And that I think was one of the things that we didn't really see coming as much. I think it was talked about, but it was like, oh, that'd be ridiculous if they would stop supporting something that essentially helps run probably a good number of stores out there in terms of somebody who's actually getting point of sale, somebody who can scan a barcode and
but like
a receipt printed.
Like I said at the time, it's not ridiculous to think that when you consider what we the general public know about the financial state of that company is probably the tip of the iceberg to what the actual financial state of that company is. Because I mean, like I said, I'm a dude on the internet and I've been able to see a lot of stuff. There's things that we don't know, right? There's things again. So you can't pay someone with nothing. You can't pay someone with debt. And if they can't make payroll, then they can't keep employees on, right? Like that's, and so it like if they knew when people started backing out saying we're not doing this anymore, we're not giving you more past June, considering it, depending on how the debt goes and what other things that they have in the fire that they have to pay for, kind of those immediate expendables. If you don't have the capital, then you can't have employees.
Yeah.
So it doesn't, like, on one level it is surprising. On the other level, somebody who's financially cynical or who just is cynical enough to think that, hey, you're these kind of, if I'm a dude on the internet that knows that's able to find out information, it seems like there's some weirdness going on, and in some level, it's not surprising. Like it doesn't surprise me really that this company is folding as fast as they are. Considering the way that where they were right when the pandemic hit, like.
Yeah, and we've had 6 months or 7 months of it sort of, slowly collapsing through the bankruptcy process, getting ready for the auction. Now, somebody winning at the auction and then failing because they pulled it back and decided to give it to the other people who eventually won it, Universal and at Bill,
correct me if I'm wrong. You may know this better than I do, but the stuff that they were getting from Penguin and Random House in that area, they weren't, I mean, I'm sure they were getting a discount to some degree, but they weren't getting like the same, they weren't able to get at the same discount that they were getting before.
They weren't, this is my understanding, they weren't getting the same discount that they were before on I hate using this term, but the floppies.
Right.
Supposedly the discounts for the collected editions, because that's the majority of Random House's business, they were getting like something close to comparable.
Okay.
And I think that's going to be the much bigger hit for the the
shops that were still ordering.
Shops that were still ordering, because sometimes it's also the relationships.
Yeah.
And now they have to breed like an entire new relationship, which they should have done in the first place. But I think that's going to be the biggest hit. I would not be surprised if some of your comic shops that you normally go to may not have as robust a collected edition section for a couple months until there's a new norm. And I'm thinking of like the other things. I was just thinking about this the other day. I just started, because I hit a few more shops than I normally do on Free Comic Book Day. I was seeing some other materials that I haven't seen in traditional comic shops before. Lore Olympus books. All of a sudden, you can see, like, I never saw those in comic shops before, and now there's, they have the entire series available at least two of the shops that I went to, and that's Penguin Random House.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have, the types of graphic novels like that, they don't have anything that competes on a level of a Dogman, I think, with Scholastic, but you were seeing some material like that certainly is a graphic novel, but didn't come up the regular graphic novel ranks. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Right.
And sometimes you confuse, I mean, I think the best example of a crossover from going up in comics in a traditional sense and also receiving success in that area is Bone, in terms of the mass market. But I do think that you're going to see that a bigger hit until new relationships are established in regards to collected editions. I may be wrong, but that's what I think.
Well, I think one of the big things that's going to happen, and very, very quickly, now that PRH has given their final date, is that a lot of people who were ordering from different, from multiple distributors, that were ordering from Lunar, that were ordering from PRH, that were still ordering from Diamond, are basically just going to take this as that's it. I'm not ordering anything from Diamond. I'm just going to go through.
I don't
PRH,
know why you would at
Lunar. Well, I mean, there are a couple publishers that are still only in Diamond, but like it's such a slim number.
That's
at this point. I think Zenoscope maybe.
Yeah, that's on the publisher.
I think about the biggest name is Archie. I think
Archie,
about the biggest name,
but
in that round is Archie. But how much?
How long is that going to last?
Comic shops at this point,
Yeah. I think. I think for their purposes, Diamond might just stop being who people order through. Period. When it comes to comics or books, and I think the big thing is toys. The toys are going to be a huge loss for them, and the fact that they've laid off almost their entire Diamond specialty or Diamond Select toys department.
Diamond Select and Gentle Giant, gone.
Yeah,
Gentle Giant,
that's gone. So
gone.
There's really not much incentive for people who are like, well, I'll still use Diamond, but for other things. It's like, well, what other things are left? The one exception I think that's still kind of confusing for people is what's happening with Diamond UK, because they have different distribution deals that are still in effect, including with distributing like Marvel and graphic novels that PRH, has been distributing through Diamond US. So I don't know if that's still the case. I don't think they've clarified that. But Diamond UK has been kind of in that weird limbo where it's a completely different winner. I think Universal has them. And there wasn't expected to be really any change in how they do business.
And apparently it's a very well managed company.
Yeah. Imagine that. Like the one thing that was probably making a profit, not having a problem.
They also have a smaller base that they have to cover, so that could be a problem.
But tariffs, I think, there are going to be the biggest issue.
Yeah.
But
and I think I mean, toys are going to have such a hit this year. Even if it's peeled back even further from 30%, given the time you come from tooling to market. There isn't any, you're going to have Mattel and Hasbro and Spin Master toys, but even they're going to be diminished this Christmas. I mean, the Superman lines that are coming out for this, if you're into toys, you better collect those because they're going to be the last toys you're going to see, for a bit in a mass scale. I mean, they're not going to die. You're not going to see, Monster High or Barbie go away. That's not going to happen, but there's going to be fewer of them for a time period. And I don't think it's not necessarily so much the tariff levels, it's the confusion the chaos over the tariffs. I mean, who would want to dedicate money and time and research and R&D and other areas when it's a toddler and that's shepherding this,
So I have a question about on the toy thing, and it's mainly because I'm not as plugged into that side of the zeitgeist as you are. But has McFarlane said anything about about how that's going to affect his line of toys, or kind of where he's at? Because I know he's obviously still got thumbprints and comics and stuff too. But toys are his
oddly
bread and butter.
quiet. He's been oddly quiet about what the ramifications are of Mattel getting the DC license back, and what that means for, because Spin Master was actually the primary license. It wasn't McFarlane. It sure doesn't feel that way, but they were actually a secondary license. So I think that is kind of strange because Todd.
Yeah, normally he's very vocal about.
Yeah. His wife must have, just really been kneeing him in the balls and saying, "Don't say a word, honey.
Just shut up, Todd. Just
shut
up. Don't say nothing." Grabbing him by
the
ear.
Let Liefeld do all the talking.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that as from the perspective of this is somebody that's henpecked. She is the business side of McFarlane.
Yep.
So,
oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's not where I'm coming from. Just before I get somebody saying, "Hey,"
I mean, it has to be, when you have somebody super, creative, but also, a boy, it tends to really fall to his wife to really make sure that everything's still running and that he isn't spending all of his money on every single license out there that he wants to make a toy for. Because otherwise he would,
Some people are Ozzy, some people are Sharon Osbourne.
It 100%. 100%. You need a Sharon Osbourne if you want that Ozzy to, not be sitting in a gutter somewhere. So, well, I mean, at the time, anyway, I don't think there's really much going on now. But
you want to hear the coolest fun fact about Sharon Osbourne?
Yeah.
What?
Send it.
Do you know that she was the one who suggested Ronnie James Dio to replace Ozzy?
I'd heard that. I'd actually read that before. Yep.
Because at that time, the Sabbath was still managed by her father.
Yep.
That management relationship went, I think, till like 81 or 82 or so. And that's a cool trivia question.
She also played a hand in him after Randy Rhoads dying, and obviously there were a whole lot of other people at play, but Zakk Wylde playing in the picture because Ozzy wasn't sure about hiring an American, kind of Zakk Wylde style guitarist.
Yeah.
And then she played a hand. She's like, "No, seriously, this guy is going to be the fill-in for you." And I mean, it was a good pick.
Do you know who the guitarist was between them?
Huh?
Right after Randy Rhoads, it was the dude from Night Ranger.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Why not?
But
was he just in between gigs and was like, "I'll help you guys out"?
Signed, but he like immediately came in after the.
I didn't. He didn't record an album.
Yeah, the live album from the Ritz.
Gotcha. Okay, that's him.
That's Brad. What's his face? Yeah.
Okay.
Brad, what's his face? He's Swedish.
Here lies Brad. What's his face? He's normally awake.
He's also drummed for some stuff.
For Who's-Its.
For the Who's-Its and the What's-Its and the other guy, with the thing. And the bats.
The guy who was in the thing before that. Yeah.
I like being so he is the Gilby Clark of Black Sabbath. Or Randy Rhoads.
Now GNR posts Use Your Illusion far better than I do, Caleb. Did Buckethead ever record with them?
Actually, I think Buckethead recorded some live stuff. Interesting enough, I don't think who played on. I don't think Buckethead played on Spaghetti, and I think he's on some of that.
He wouldn't have. That was still.
Yeah,
that was still.
I don't know for a fact. I'll have to go look that up.
But I don't think it's him on Chinese Democracy.
No. That's no.
Yeah.
I can find out real quick.
It's okay.
Good old
Chinese Democracy has some legitimately good songs. That album does not. It catches a lot of flack. There's some legitimately good songs on that.
Okay.
Not a great album cohesively at all, but there are like a few good songs on that album that get a lot of flack.
Okay.
Just I watch his full face. He's like,
I'm not saying anything.
Better's a good song. Better's a fantastic song.
I'm not saying anything.
They still play that song at concerts. Like Slash loves playing that shit.
Cool.
I love that. It's like that's so nice for you. That really is. It's very nice for you.
And you did it all by yourself.
all by yourself. You're such a big boy. So good. So good.
Well, I mean, if you've ever been in theater, like there's those times you see your friend, and when you're in a bomb, and I think there were a lot of lines that were used like that for Chinese democracy. You're so brave.
You're so brave.
I understand what you're trying to do. Yeah.
I just, I can see the effort that you're putting into this.
I like that for you.
And then the nonverbal.
So I have it in my little thing, but this shit is the shit. I don't know.
7-Up,
7-Up. Yeah, well, it's the tropical 7-Up tropical zero sugar. I mean, their regular version is also really good too, but we got the zero sugar in this house. I have not drank a 7-Up for 20 years, and I went and picked the stuff up because it was on sale, and it is freaking delicious. Okay. And I've even got Jason drinking it, which he hates soda. So
I don't know that I've had 7-Up as an adult that didn't have Seagram 7 in it.
Yeah, I don't think I've had 7-Up as an adult. I definitely haven't had Sunkissed as an adult.
Sunkissed, yeah.
Definitely haven't had that as an adult.
So I'll promo my drink. I'm also drinking bubbly, sparkling water, strawberry sunset,
or as my mom calls it, buble.
I have to get another one, but what I'll have. I'm going to be buried with
that. That image, that was brilliant. That because it just froze on that right there with buble, yeah, and Zero. Oh, good old Zero. Power 8.
I mean, this is if anybody has a trademark drink, it's me.
Samwise React says, "You drink just mixers?" I finished all of my sangria, so I'm going on to the 7-Up now.
Yeah, I don't drink anymore, pretty much.
Yeah,
I'm not drinking. I'm not actually not. I usually do have a beverage or something while we record, but I just didn't tonight. I may sneak down and fill a glass with something and have a nightcap.
But I was just thinking about this, because I went to a lot of concerts over the last few days, and both at the Buffalo Tom and Gang of Four are at the same venue, and it's a bar. They have, and it's like, I'll have a Coke. I'm just not there at this point in my life.
I'll just have a water.
Yeah, no, I really don't drink anymore.
Yeah. Since I got on a gym kick, or really just a health kick in general, quit drinking. But I mean, that was also and I've been honest about this. I was drinking like a bottle of wine and a half a night, so through law school, and needed to back off and have a wonderful husband who was like very, he looks at me kind of like Bill does when I say things like Chinese democracy has good songs. He was just like, "You're going to quit drinking." So I've backed off quite a bit. Now, still, like I said, I'll go have like some bourbon on ice, but I'm also going to get up and go to the gym at 5 a.m. in the morning, and I don't want to deal with having whiskey in my system to slog me down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So I'm going to drink gin.
Honestly,
I'm just going to
think like New Year's Eve was my last drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the last time I had a drink. And
I don't miss.
Yeah.
I'm also cheap.
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
That bottle of wine is three modern comics.
When I was in college in the Stone Age, we had mug night at the Stone Balloon, and you got a mug at the beginning of the year for $5, and every refill was 35 cents. And of course, it was like shit, like Pabst or Meisterbrow on tap, which is even worse than the cans. But there was a lot of 35 cents that went.
You earned that mug back 10 times, right?
Yeah, just I can't conceive of drinking like that now. and the level of gin and tonics that I would have in my early 20s, I can't conceive of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Samwise does remind us it was an Always Sunny in Philadelphia reference. You drink just mixers. But I love the reaction. Yeah, no, I remember. I do remember
on my
that
list.
now that you reminded me.
It's
on my list.
It's not, I haven't seen it.
Someday. It's on my list.
I just read an interview.
With Mad Men is on my list.
Mad Men, yeah. Sopranos. Have you heard of it? I heard it was really
that
good.
I actually watched.
Yep.
I watched it.
I just read an interview with Caitlin Olsen and Rob McElhenney, who have been married for 17 years, but they met on the show. So I guess it's almost 20 years old now. And apparently their oldest son is old enough to watch it now as a teenager. Mm-hmm. And they're watching it together with him, like season 1. And they're like, who are these children on screen? Like, who is this? That was us 20 years ago. It's just kind of a weird thought that they're like, I don't recognize who these children are.
Yeah.
And now our kids watching them.
Yeah. Sunny's not on my list. I'm not a comedy person. So like I've never been, I feel like Sunny, I'm sure there's like comedic nuances that make them different, but like what I've seen of Sunny reminds me of the same kind of shtick that I saw in The Office, and I don't like that either.
No,
they're not yet.
Oh no,
are they way different? Okay, yeah, I'd like to say.
It's offensively different. Like something in The Office is like innocuous. What happens in It's Always Sunny is starts offensive and then goes so far past the pale that you're like, I can't believe this made it onto television. Daniel Williamson has joined us. Hello, Daniel. Again, and listening to Americans complain about the price of alcohol, a regular beer in a bar here in Finland is like $15.
Well,
yes, but that beer is also what, 14%?
It also depends on the bar you're going to here.
Yeah.
It might be as high as that.
Yeah. It's not a beer that tastes similar to water that has been run through a sock. That is American. Some American beers.
Yeah, a good stout. So if I were to go to a decent bar that had a good stout, I would pay $15 for a pint.
12 to 15.
Stout.
Yeah.
Like that's like it. But yeah, no. If you want Pabst, or if you Bud Light or Coors, that whatever piss water that is, you're still going to pay $8 to $10 for that. You go to a concert, you're paying $12 for like a little plastic cup of it.
Yeah. That's concert prices are another world.
Yeah, but still, I mean, I take his point. Yeah, so fair enough.
Yeah, no, that's good.
I think we've got a little too far away from comics to like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and Chinese democracy. So I think we need to refocus. And why don't we start talking about the funny books? Okay, so let's start with Steve. Steve, I understand you have a DC book.
I do. And I think this has been kind of like a consistent refrain from us since the entire line started. But DC's Absolute line of comics has just been one really amazing hit after another. I obviously some, in the tier, some are just S level, God level, whatever. You've got your Absolute Superman, Batman, and of course Absolute Wonder Woman at the top. But even like the secondary tier books are so good. Absolute Martian Manhunter that we talked about last episode, so good, just beautiful and unique. Absolute Flash, which is written by Jeff Lemire. It's really interesting. It's a unique take, and the art is just kinetic, like pure energy on that page. And now, of course, we've also got Absolute Green Lantern. And this is what DC did in taking a chance in rewriting the Green Lantern mythos. Not just, who these characters are, but what being a Green Lantern means overall. Like what is Oa? What is the Green Lantern? What is the Lantern Battery itself? What is the history of this, and how do they interact with people? Are they international space cops? Probably not in this incarnation. It seems very different. And it starts in issue number 1. There's the second issue came out, I believe, last week or the week before. So we do have 2 issues out. The first issue, it is very enigmatic. You don't really know what's going on. There's not a lot of background here in the first issue, but you are introduced right away to Hal Jordan. And this is not a Hal Jordan that anybody recognizes. This Hal Jordan appears frantic. He appears, nervous and, traumatized. This is not a Hal Jordan that we're used to.
I think the word you really need to put forward is he's afraid. It's fear.
Afraid.
And that is not a word you ever associate with Hal Jordan.
Absolutely. And this is not, this is not just like normal fear. This is like sweaty palms, desperate fear. That is something that you don't associate with Hal Jordan at all, unless he's being manipulated somehow. And he could be in this situation. But right away, we know that something's wrong. This Hal Jordan not only is afraid, but he also doesn't have access to Green Lantern. He doesn't have access to green energy. What it is black. And very clearly is black that is affecting his hand. And what do we know of a particular character in the DC universe, normal canon? Black Hand, who is essentially, one of the big bads from relatively recent, I guess maybe the past 25 years. He was instrumental in Blackest Night. So that's, I think, probably what most people remember him from. Black Hand, basically, with this death energy, bringing zombified creatures and versions of heroes back to life and, generally wreaking havoc in the DC universe. Well, this black energy, this Black Hand that has infected Hal, doesn't seem to be on death, but more on fear itself. So taking on kind of like a characteristic of the yellow energy, but much more violent and much more horrific. So, he's encountered, when you first see him, he encounters a cop who's kind of like, dude, you got some shit going on. You need to stop. You need to tell me what's going on here. And he very quickly eradicates the cop, not on purpose. He doesn't want to, but that cop is wiped off the highway. It is, unfortunately, Sergeant Smear after that. And he's not in control. So Hal is not in control, not only of his emotions, but he's not in control of this power that he's been given. We flash back a bit in the first issue to what precipitated this whole thing. And basically, you've got the three buddies. You've got Hal Jordan. You've got John Stewart. And you've also got Sojourner Malign, also known as Joe Malign, who is one of the Green Lanterns that of recent years that we're familiar with. But in this context, we are not familiar with them. John Stewart's still he's an architect, but so is Joe. So Joe's an architect here. Hal is not a test pilot. He he basically sells toys. So he's more of a toy maker or a toy, salesperson, whatever. So very immature, kind of not this test pilot that we've come to expect from the versions of Hal Jordan that we've had before.
Well, he was a toy salesman in the past.
Well, that's interesting.
In the 70s.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one not involved with any kind of death-defying anything. It's just, I sell toys.
But I thought what kind of toy salesman he is here makes sense for genre fiction like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
I liked what they did here. Yep.
Oh, absolutely. I like these characters. I like how they, how they're friends, even though really, these characters are very disparate. They were introduced very differently in the mainstream DC universe over time. Had very different way of encountering each other, especially Joe, who's very new. But these are old buddies. They, they're in town, just having some coffee, hanging out. And what happens but a giant green dome of energy just descends upon the town and blocks the town off from the outside world and vice versa. It's a very messy effect. People try to get out. And they get, again, smeared across the dome. And what's causing this? We are introduced in the second issue to the Abensur. Not just Abensur, but the Abensur. And this one is decidedly not wearing a Green Lantern uniform, is decidedly very naked, and also has multiple arms. A little bit different from the way that we've seen an Abensor in the past, and this Abensor seems to be entreating the people to be without fear, but also punishing them for showing fear. And you've got the cops kind of trying to keep things calm. And who's one of the main cops? It is Guy Gardner. And yes, this gentleman, if you are watching, running along with us, if you're reading the comic itself, this Guy Gardner has no hair on his head. He has a shaved bald head, a glorious beard, looks pretty dang woofy in a uniform. But on top of that, is also very level-headed. He's the one who's kind of like, hey guys, calm down. We gotta, we're in a situation here. We're way outclassed. We've got a giant alien who can just, slice people in half, with a snap of a finger. We need to keep things, on the up here and take it slow. Unfortunately for poor Guy, he ends up sliced in half and does not make it.
So for a comic about people who wield spectral color magic, Guy Gardner being level-headed is the most absurd thing about this.
Oh, absolutely. And also being shaved, having his head shaved in this or being bald. Yeah. I mean, that again, taking the idea of some of these characters that we know, that we love, that we think we understand, and, completely rewriting them, chucking out that script and giving them a role that's similar to the role that they have, in the mainstream DC universe, but with a very different approach. And I appreciate that because it gives you sort of another idea of a way to interpret these characters. When the slate is wiped clean and not everybody has to have the exact same origin. It's really cool. It's refreshing. It's a nice sort of like alternate take on things. Unfortunately, it doesn't go well for anybody, it seems. And, Joe has found Hal in a diner, miles away. Unfortunately, Hal's black hand has destroyed the diner, killed everybody inside. And really, Joe's just trying to figure out what happened. What happened to him, but also, how did I get these powers, these super green powers?
I love that she's a detective.
We don't. Well, she's an architect here as well. But the thing is, she's using the same kind of logic, the same kind of like detective skills.
It's still Joe
that she had in the other universe to try and figure out what's going on here. And I think it's great. I think the way that we're, the glimpses that we're getting so far. And again, we're still early in the arc. Mm-hmm. It's only 2 issues in.
Yeah. We've also seen John Stewart too.
Yeah. We don't see we've met him.
Yeah.
He was there. He seems to be, he seems to have a little bit of an idea of what, they can do to, to interact or to stop this Abensor from, imprisoning them or killing more people. And it involves a ring somehow, but maybe not a ring coming from Oa or a ring from the Lantern Battery. This might be a ring that they're creating themselves. And you'll notice that in some of the pictures and promotional materials, and let me see if I can grab it. Yeah. You notice that Joe is wearing a ring as a Green Lantern, but this is not a Green Lantern ring. This is just a standard band. It looks like a wedding band. And at the end of issue 2, you see John Stewart looking into a wedding band as well, saying, I think I've got an idea of how to harness this energy. And there's just a really interesting approach here. This is being written by Al Ewing, so we know that he's got a lot of strengths here. The artist I'm not familiar with. It's John D. Lindsay, or is it John? Yeah, John D. Lindsay. I don't recall seeing their work before, but I wouldn't say that this is just competent. This is very, very beautiful and very, it's an interesting style. There's a little bit of like maybe manga or manhwa style with how he, presents the characters. But also it just seems really well done. I also like the color usage. Colors are
they're
also by John D. Lindsay. Yep. Yeah. So
and also worth mentioning that the lettering is by friend of the show and former guest Lucas Catani.
I was getting there. Yeah, absolutely. It's always exciting to see Lucas on a book that I'm loving so much. And of course, if you go back to that episode where we had him on talking about his technique as a letterer and what he kind of looks for and the things that he does and brings to to the book. You can see it in perfect, it's perfectly brought on here as well. I mean, just looking at how Abin Sur speaks, everything's kind of bolded differently, but there's also a green colored tint to everything. There's like an outline to all of the words. Just really neat. But I'm liking this. It's absolute Green Lantern. 2 issues in so far. It's one of the Absolute Universe's ongoing series. So pick it up. If you've been enjoying the other Absolute books, this is definitely going to be, one of the other ongoings that hopefully, continues to shine and meets that level of excellence that we've come to expect from this whole initiative. I'm just so excited for Absolute. Like this is something that we've been wanting from DC for a while, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it's been really successful.
I like this a lot. Got my copy here. I don't have issue 2 yet. And
sorry, I spoiled
it. No, it's all right. Jesus, if I live like that, God almighty. But I loved that this continues in the Absolute dynamic of things that are familiar are just, they're still operating just different in a sense where the journey's going to be different. The journey's not going to be the same. I think we're seeing a Green Lantern core between the relationship between Joe and John and Guy and Hal. I loved hearing you say at the end, it sounds like it's Hal that's putting some of the pieces together because he's frantic in the first issue. And it could be a core around one person, but it's still a core, and maybe less militarized and more like a police force in the way that in the position that Guy has and that John had, previously was a policeman as well. And it's those little nuances that I think are going to keep distinguishing.
Yeah.
Absolute.
And
really good remixes,
absolutely. I hope that they somehow bring Guy back, or at least have some more to do with him, because it would suck if he's just sort of like he pops up and he's gone. Because of
you're just wondering like, what is this universe's Kyle? What's his role?
Well, I was sitting here, I was sitting here thinking like, what other characters, almost 2 non-human characters, do we want to? I mean, obviously, my answer is going to be Kilowog. I love Kilowog. It's like I want to, but like Bill said, everything is just a shade to the left of what, but it's still in the same. It's still familiar, but it's totally different at the same time. I would love to see what those characters are here. As well, especially since we see Abin Sur, and I haven't read this yet, but I'm fascinated by it. I need to get it read.
The whole thing is like you look at Lois Lane in Absolute Superman, you look at Bruce Wayne's friends, let's put it that way, in Absolute Batman, and it isn't a dynamic where it's just putting them in the reverse of what they are.
Yeah, it's not at all.
It's not that at all. Their motivations make perfect sense with the particular terrain that they're on. I just think line wise, it's been really, really off to a good start.
Well, and it's not. I mean, I'm gonna beat the dead horse, but it's not just this particular line. It's the DC line in general.
Yeah.
It's just fine. It's not even just. It's not just the Absolute books, which are amazing. I read a ton of DC stuff this past weekend. None of which I'm talking about, but just even basic stuff like Action Comics and Detective Comics are just insanely good right now.
And I think what's especially good about, excuse me for yawning here, books like Action Detective World's Finest, they're earning their titles.
Yes.
Detectives these are great detective stories.
Yep.
These are great action stories. We are seeing the 2 world's finest heroes together. They're earning their titles, which is something really cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We haven't to talk about, but it looks like
before we do have a couple comments here that are pretty neat. So Daniel Williamson said, didn't some Absolute titles get a bunch of Eisner nominations? Yes. Both Absolute Batman and Absolute Wonder Woman were nominated for Best New Series. And then for creators, we had Kelly Thompson, Nick Dragata, Hayden Sherman, who is lettering, Jordi Belair, Becca Carey, Clayton Cowles. And I mean, Hayden Sherman is for cover artist, I think, for Wonder Woman. But Becca Carey, Clayton Cowles for letters. I mean, this is just they've really gotten a lot. Also, poor Absolute Hal from Cliff on Comics. Absolutely poor Absolute Hal. I feel so bad for him, and he just looks so defeated and terrified. Not what we like to see for Hal. Samwise had mentions, timeline wise, is this after Rebirth? Yes. I mean, it's well after Rebirth. Basically, the Absolute Universe starts with last year's All In special in the middle of the summer. So it's basically current DC timeline, but just running parallel with what's happening in the main.
But just so you know, hey James, just so you know that it's not Elseworlds or anything like that. Nope. This is a parallel world that was affected by Darkseid's energies, and all of his fucked upness is fucked upping this.
Everything is fucked up.
You see the kind of insert to that. I mean, they cover it kind of all and everything. But if you read the main Aquaman book. Right now, it starts talking about the Omega Gate and kind of gives you an idea of where, like, how this absolute world is, or worlds. I mean, we're not even sure if it's a shared world, or it doesn't feel like it for a lot of ways. So,
I can't wait to see how these connect. I cannot wait to see how these.
Yeah, I mean, government-wise,
things are. Caleb, so I understand that because I think tonally there are some wildly different tones to the books, but I have been. Approaching it as a perspective of these versions all occupy the same world.
Yeah, the one outlier, I don't see how Ultimate or Absolute Wonder Woman. Like, I can see how Ultimate Superman ties in with maybe, or not Ultimate, Absolute Batman and Absolute Superman, Absolute Batman and Absolute Martian Manhunter can absolutely share a world. For me, like, the outlier really, the outlier really is. Absolute Wonder Woman, like that. That just doesn't, like. I want to see what they do with that, because,
but geographically they haven't really crossed over. So we'll see.
We're not sure where any
which
of
is
this
fun,
is, but
right?
that's fine.
Like, I love that. Like, it's fun. There's a mystery to comics again.
Yeah. Yep. All right, I have a DC book. That's from one of the lines. Yes, I do. And Steve, if you want to put that first graphic up, I can also hold it up. I want to talk about Resurrection Man, Quantum Karma, #1. Now, this, I have to say, is a case of an artist absolutely blowing my mind. I was not familiar at all with Anardark's work. I was not familiar with it. I know that he's done about 4 or 5 projects before this with Ram V, who is the writer. I knew that he had a short White Witch stories and Batman Urban Legends that really didn't read too well. But this art absolutely blew me away. And that it's with Ram V, who is very good with telling stories of cosmic craziness. It's just a very good relationship between artist and writer. Now, they've done a number of things together before, speaking of Eisner's, and it did win for Blue and Green, which was their 3rd collaboration after Miracle Men and Graffiti's Wall. And they also did Radio Apocalypse together, which was from Vault. I definitely want to explore some of these books. I definitely want to explore some of these, because this was a case where an artist that I really had no familiarity with just blew my mind. So Resurrection Man is a concept that dates back to the 90s, but also goes a bit farther back because of the character Mitch Shelley's connections with 2 of DC's main immortal characters, Vandal Savage and Immortal Men. It's Black Label. That's kind of put to the side. If they work that in there, great. It doesn't really matter. But the thing about Resurrection Man is he was someone who effectively was a hero living in a superhero's world that didn't always behave like a hero, and had one really cool distinguishing factor in that the way that he died affected the way that he was reborn. So if he was electrified in his previous life, he had electric powers when he woke up and was in a new body. If he was stabbed to death, he might wake up as Edward Scissorhands. There was always a correlation between the way he was killed and the way he moved forward. So the first page, I have to say, is in some ways kind of farewell, because though the rest of the book was the aforementioned artist, the artist here is Butch Guice, who recently passed away. And I approached this, I almost thought that this was a reprint. It just has that feel to it. Almost like a Who's Who page from late 90s, early 2000s, but it tells the story of what Mitch Shelley was. And you're kind of in the seat there, you're thinking, oh, okay, we're going to see Mitch Shelley again. Not so fast. And Steve, if you can go to the next graphic, and I apologize for anybody listening, it turns out this was from a comic book collection from an elderly man who's about to pass away. And this is his grandkids, his grandkid and his child, the grandchild's mother, talking about the comic books that they're seeing there, and that they're basically came home to, help wish him off. So this gentleman is dying. He decided in this life to not go the adventurer route, settled down, had a family, had a very good life, but he's about to die, and he's still the Resurrection Man. So Steve, if you can go forward here a little bit. So I didn't include and this is just testimony to just how great Anand Arke's work is, of him waking up in this weird garden and coming back to life, and he's de-aging, and he's just a simple act of holding a butterfly or butterfly-like creature. It's just so beautiful how this is handled here. So Steve, if you can keep going here, this is a flash forward. Can we just get another graphic? I'm sorry about the order here, but what's going on this time, though, for Resurrection Man is he's remembering all his lives. That doesn't always happen. He doesn't always remember specifically what happened. And this means something's different this time. This means something is very different. And if we can go to the next page, it's, as you can see with these graphics, there's something that's cosmically different about this time around and how things are going to transpire. And instead of going into a new life, he goes into a previous life. And this previous life is harsh. In this previous life, he was not Mitch, but he was Mark Seavers. He was a serviceman who was captured by the Japanese at the end of World War II. And he's in a death camp in New Guinea. And Steve, if you can go back, I think 2 there, there's actually what they blacked out wasn't necessarily because of the graphic images. These are actually text boxes because these are preview pages and they didn't want you to read ahead. But there are men dying in this prison camp by the ton. But this also, as I said, happens at the end of World War II, and they've just received word that Adolf Hitler has passed away, that he shot himself in the bunker. So the Japanese internment commandant knows that things are going to be wrapping up. But instead of celebrating in a way that most rational people do, he's celebrating in his way, which is directly linked to cannibalism. And how Mitch dies is related to what his next life is. And that is a continuance. And there is a survivor from the fire that happened at the death camp. And the survivor does not want to be a survivor. It's really, really cosmic and epic. I have no idea where these next lives are going to take us. And that's such an exciting prospect, because in the preview pages for the next issue is the fucking Justice League. So, that it can operate in a world that's this harsh. And you actually get references to the Justice Society and the Spear of Destiny in as harsh a landscape as we are seeing in the Japanese death camp. So this is a black label, very definitely DC Universe. Ram V is a great writer to be provided with these particular play tools to develop a story, but it's the artist. It's on an RK that, whoa. I mean, I was just absolutely blown away by his art, and I really want to look at some of his other work.
I got up to go check the closet. I've got a copy of Graffiti's Wall somewhere, and that's the first time that was the first Ram V I'd ever read, and so that's also the first time I saw an odd RK, and yeah, has just an absolutely. It almost has like a Bond S&A feel. Like it is very much. It flows. It's hard to put it's hard to give you kind of a reference point for it.
Well, I think that's important because both of these gentlemen are from India.
Yeah.
And, whatever they grew up with, naturally affects their art. And that's not necessarily always going to be Western influences.
No. And it does.
They're working within a Western idiom, and they're working within it beautifully. I was so impressed with it.
It's like a fluid Mobius. Like, I don't even know. Like it.
There's really nothing to compare it to.
Yeah.
Of course, there's going to be like, as you saw in the pages. If you just saw the pages, you wouldn't have. If this had come into was a page from Heavy Metal that Steve talked about last week, 2 weeks ago, you wouldn't have batted an eye. Oh yeah, that looks Heavy Metal.
Yeah. But
the flow of the story. And his ability as a storyteller,
it's fantastic.
Something very different, though.
Yeah, I adore it.
Did he? I was looking up a little bit more on Anand RK. He's done a lot for 2000 AD, so he definitely does work with a lot of non-North American publications as well as the big two. But I'm trying to see, did he work on what was that? Ram V book, Caleb, I think you talked about it last year or the year before, where it had something to do with food. It was like some kind of.
Oh no! That's Rare Flavors. That was
Rare Flavors.
Shit.
So it wasn't Anand RK who worked on that one. I wasn't sure. I'm trying to remember.
Was that the same artist as the Many Deaths of
Many Lives of Layla Starr?
Yes.
Or the Many Deaths of Layla Starr, which I loved. I love that book. That was for me my introduction to Ram V, and I absolutely was like, this guy. I really do want to read more of what he has, and he's been putting stuff out consistently, very well and very strongly. On a lot of North American publications.
And if you go to Anand RK's website,
Felipe Andrade. Sorry.
Yeah.
Felipe Andrade. Okay, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Very different style, but like I'm just trying to think like something else that he's worked with Ram V on to kind of to bring this to life. But yeah. I have seen his work. Okay, he did Blue Book 1947. Which I read. That was a James Tinian series about real life alien sightings in the U.S.
And if you go to his website, you'll see some very interesting paint work as well. I mean, some commissions that were done for the Indian Army, for the Indian Navy, and some other things that look very different from what we see here. Just a massively talented artist.
Cool.
Someone I'm definitely going to follow. And the story's fascinating too. So,
are you reading Ram V's Fourth World stuff that he's doing right now?
I read DC.
The New Gods?
Yeah, New Gods.
Yes.
Yeah.
You do in fact read every DC book. That is a fair assessment. I forget.
Yeah, there's some stuff that come in like I wouldn't like the Conjuring books I didn't read. Like it's just like the Joe Hill's books. Like there's some.
You didn't read Basketful of Heads,
but to the point that I do.
Hey, that was good.
Scooby Doo and Looney Tunes.
Yeah. I understand it was a stupid question. I acknowledge it. I will backtrack it. Are you enjoying his New Gods book?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if enjoy is the word. But I'm getting a lot out of it.
Are you experiencing it?
I'm having a profound experience.
I appreciated experiencing your book.
Yeah, enjoy. I don't know if that's the word though.
It actually makes me care about fourth world stuff, and I generally don't.
Really?
So, yeah.
Wow, I would have had you marked as a fourth world person, not necessarily Kirby fourth world, but other people handling fourth world.
Wow. Honest, like I would. It's not a turnoff, but like dark side in a book just goes. It's not a turnoff, but it's just like okay, this again.
Okay,
sure, I get it. The most I have liked a fourth world story was Tom King's. That's the first one I was like, hey, I am gonna walk away with this in a better mood than I came over here. Like I don't know, like I just don't care.
Okay,
yeah. Hey, we do have a comment here from Samwise again. The Dark Works of Comics are great. If you guys ever want to cover anything horror, The Department of Truth, Something is Killing Children, Lock and Key. These are actually all books that we've talked about here on the show. If you want to dig through our old episodes on here,
but none of these in a while. I think out of these, the last time we talked about a book of the ones that he mentioned, that Samwise mentioned, was probably the Sandman Lock and Key crossover.
Yeah,
that one we definitely did,
which was so good.
It was so that made me cry so much. I did talk about Department of Truth a couple months back with the Marilyn Monroe story.
Right, yes,
that
was
right. Really fantastic.
Yes,
that was great.
I want to say I have not spoken about it, but I may have been Brian. Somebody spoke about. I don't know if it was Something's Killing the Children or the spinoff book that came out of that. So, but yeah, I remember having that conversation on the show as well. All good choices. I mean, that's
absolutely.
And there's some connective tissue there, being the reason why.
And if you go all the way back to Caleb's other podcast, Song of Fried Geekery, he did talk about Harrow County quite a bit. So that's if you're really interested, if you've not read Harrow County, check those episodes out, and then
if you go to archives, we definitely have talked about horror.
We've got a bunch of stuff.
But those are great recommendations, Samwise. Yep. Like 100%. Like that's we never mind reminding people that fantastic books are out there, because I figure I'm taken by context. This is probably Samwise's first time listening to our show, or second time. Awesome. Thanks for watching. And so check out the back catalog and stuff. But yeah, we talk about this kind of stuff all the time. Come back.
Yeah. And if you go to the Libsyn page, we do have write-ups about each episode. So
it makes it a little bit easier. I know sometimes, like if you're looking through keywords and hashtags, that YouTube is probably the best way to look for that. But even then, it's some of the older episodes we don't have marked up as much with the tags.
Some really great interviews too. If you're looking for creator interviews, go back in the catalog, man. Like some great interviews, even way back interviews, some good stuff.
So anyway, some of us have had a chance. Mr. Alexander McKinsey hasn't. So why don't you take the baton here and tell us about a book that you're enjoying?
Well, I'm going to jump over to the other big mainstream book, which I already mentioned this, but yeah, just also read a bunch of DC stuff this past week, and just great all across the board. Wonder Woman right now is amazing. So, but you know what publisher, longstanding publisher, historically loved publisher, don't have a lot of good stuff out right now. Marvel, which happens. I mean, you look around my room, the vast majority of my stuff is Marvel stuff. I'm a Marvel mark. That's where I started off. But it is not the same environment that we find at DC. There's not a ton of books at Marvel that are really great right now. There are some though. And so as much as kind of, the zeitgeist does this thing where, again, like, and I'm a little bit guilty of doing it too, but it's like all DC is amazing right now. Well, some of it's better than others, right? But it genuinely across the line wide is good. Or they'll say, hey, Marvel sucks right now. That's not fair, right? Like that's too simplistic of a thing. There are fantastic books.
Can you say that again, please?
Marvel sucks right now?
No, that it's not fair.
Oh, that's not a fair assessment. That's not fair.
God, you just got my like Legend of Billie Jean heart pitter pattering a little bit. Fair is fair.
Fair is fair.
Fair is fair. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the answer.
That is not a fair assessment, though. There are some fantastic books. Fair is fair. So, and one of those books that is absolutely worth traveling over to the House of Ideas for right now is the current run of The Incredible Hulk. And it is both easy for me to say that, and I say it's easy for me to say that because I'm a huge Hulk fan, big Hulk mark, which means I've read a lot of bad Hulk. I've read a lot of bad Hulk. I know how to call bad Hulk when I see it. And I'm really loving what this group is doing, right? So Philip Kennedy Johnson and Nick Klein have been the two kind of main folks on this book, although we do see some guest artists on here. I'm not sure. Sometimes I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's just because Klein works slower or what, but you do see some breakup in this. But this really capitalizes off of this entire series, right? Capitalizes off of the last good Hulk run, which was the Immortal Hulk, which, Al Ewing and company did that. It's an incredible book, and there was a flop in between there that we just don't need to talk about because it was terrible. But this plays off of that. So the kind of crux of this, right? Hulk and Banner are at odds with one another, right? They're still wrestling with identity, and they're still wrestling with who's the dominant force, and they hate each other again. And Hulk doesn't want anything to do with Banner, and has kind of got control of that body. He's not letting Banner surface, and the Hulk is, as he's journeying on, he has incurred the wrath of this kind of primordial being known as the Eldest. It's the kind of the mother of monsters situation. She was the first, and everything's born of her. And she has all of these little minions and monsters and stuff that she's sending after Hulk throughout these, 20 issues. I think issue 24, 25 is about to come out now, or is the next one. But so she's doing that. And one of them that she sends after the Hulk is this her daughter, right? It's like Hannah, who is this mother of lycanthropes, mother of skinwalkers, everything else, that goes after Hulk. But there's kind of deviated because if you've been reading this, that Hulk has a new friend, this young kind of badass rocker goth chick girl named Charlie Tidwell, who's lived a rough life, and has ended up here, right on the outskirts on the run with Bruce Banner, and is being chased by monsters. But Charlie is a special person in her own right. And again, go back and read this series. But because they were thrown in the mix, and because like Hannah was chasing them, they end up kind of getting cornered. And Charlie is able to steal something called the Godskin. It's this pelt that she's able to take, which effectively makes her a lycanthrope, like makes her this kind of winged werewolf creature that she ships in these body dysmorphia things, and she's able to defeat Lycan. I mean, this is literally the skin of this person, this daughter of the Eldest that she's wearing around, which you might think pisses off this ancient primordial, either evil, maleficent being. And so because of this, the Eldest sends her brother, this other Verkolak, after the Hulk, and after her to go kind of avenge and get her wrath and do whatever. Verkolak is also kind of this netherworld being, man. And so there's this really big clash. And as Charlie is kind of fighting these werewolf monsters and dealing with Verkolak and all of the shenanigans that he puts up to, Hulk is sucked down into Verkolak's world, which anybody who's a skinwalker, as a demon in this world, they never get out, right? Except somehow Charlie is able to channel some of this magic, go out there and fetch him and get it out and get away, or at least we think, right? But through these next couple of issues, that's not exactly the way that it works out. Charlie starts hearing the voice of Lycana in her head, and there's actually a really cool Werewolf by Night crossover that we just saw happen too. Fun stuff. But as they're traveling, you start to see this the voice of Lycana take over and live inside Charlie's head, and Charlie is also kind of becoming addicted to the power, or overtaken by the power. She's not losing. Well, she's losing herself. She's not lost herself yet, but she's starting to kind of give in, and you start to see this kind of stair step of what will she do next, which is kind of interesting, right? Because if you go back in the Hulk mythos, especially with what we're seeing now, with this run, but what we saw with the Immortal Hulk run, a lot of this is about the psychology of Hulk and Banner and all these different iterations of Hulk that live inside his head, or in this one body, and they have to share space and figure out how to make things work out. And now Charlie's going through the same thing, and she's not quite sure. She's not quite sure how to handle it. She doesn't know what's going on. She just knows that she can't give it up. This kind of culminates in this moment around about issue 22 or 23. And I think for those of you who are new, I tend to let things build up and then read them in bulk. What happens there is Charlie wakes up next to a bathtub full of body parts at one point in time, and she doesn't know what she's did. She's just got to hide it. She has to get away and not let Hulk find out, because obviously that would be, she's murdered somebody, and it goes from there, right? They end up getting to a point where they need to travel to New York and see Doctor Strange, and that kind of catches you up so far with this story. Again, very much plays into the mythos of Hulk, very much plays into the psychology of this character. I like having the sidekick. She's not Rick Jones, but she's not Rick Jones, right? There's still some very much like, it's a good sidekick. It's a good travel buddy to have on hand. I really like this kind of I like the world that they are building around the eldest, right? I like this group of like almost not of other gods, these other creatures that she has around her, these minions that she has, that she's able to send to do her bidding, and how she plays on multiple planes, right? She's not just attacking them on Earth through violence and skin shifters and all of this body dysmorphia, body horror stuff. She's attacking them on a psychological level. She's pulling them down into the depths of hell. She's infesting their brains, right? There's no corner that these people are running for their lives, right? They're running for answers, and there's no place that they can hide. I think that's fascinating. And she's attacking them on different levels. Steve just threw up a really great page from one of the Nick Klein drawn issues where you see this almost this weird old woman, looks like an old hag. That's actually Charlie's skin, because what we find out in one of the issues is that she's sending minions to keep an eye on them. Charlie, after she wakes up next to the bathtub full of bodies, or bathtub with a body in it, Charlie actually, she freaks out and she runs outside. She finds these kids playing basketball. Charlie is able, because of the God skin, to shed her skin and to take on the image or the body of the person that she kind of murdered. And so she does that to fit in so they won't recognize her, and she's playing basketball with them. Well, one of the minions goes and gets her skin, almost like in Harrow County where you have the Skinless Boy, which is a great reference. Again, one of my favorite series of all times. But he wears the skin because he wants to get close to Hulk. And so he's convinced that he can be his friend and trying to kick him, almost like a Smeagol moment in this, right? It's a fascinating world that Philip Kennedy Johnson's getting. I love what he does with the just the character, man. Him and Al Ewing have kind of dialed this and distilled this down into just pure magic that they're playing with. I love Nick Klein. I think that his pages are wonderful. I don't mind it when stories like shift to different artists during the middle of books, during the middle of arcs, if it's for a reason, especially if it's a stark shift. And if you see the work that Earls did Danny Earls did in some of his issues, very different shift in the middle of an arc. It's for no reason, right? Like it's not shifting over to a memory. It's just the story is the same story carried through, but with a different artist. Not bad art. It's just jarring because it's much different from Nick Klein's art. But I'd never really seen Danny Earls before either, so I went to do some research. Turns out, like, he's a full-time comic creator now. For like the past 11 years, the guy's been a professional soccer player in both the UK and the US. Like, I typed in Danny Earls and it pulled up this thing about a soccer. I'm like, no, not that Danny Earls. Yeah, no, it's that Danny Earls, who's now doing full-time comic work. Had a very good long career in America, in football, British football. We call it soccer. So really cool way to get introduced to a new artist. But man, those Nick Klein lines and just the way that he draws the behemoth of the Hulk, and the way you were talking about when we were looking at the Absolute Green Lantern book, just how scared and nervous and sweaty and frantic that Hal looks. And that's exactly what he draws when he's drawing Bruce, right? Because Bruce is able to shift back over, and you catch glimpses of him inside the head, but he draws him as just emaciated. The guy looks like he's been, I mean, he's not using, but he looks like he's been strung out on drugs for 6 months, and he's just sweating his, everything out. And it's just purely desperate. And I think that is that kind of bleak look juxtaposed with what the hopeful nature of the fact that they are running for something, they want to find something, is really good visual storytelling. And so all in all, like I said, don't miss out on this. If you maybe you read Immortal Hulk and you're like, okay, I can skip on the character for a while. Don't miss this, because it's really good work, and it's really good stuff being on the House of Ideas. And for a longtime Hulk fan, it feels right. It feels really good. I'm happy with it.
Well, that's good.
Cool.
Because that's been one of the things that you've been really disappointed about over the past couple of years, is that there really hasn't been anything to take, to succeed that mantle of the Immortal Hulk being just, the pinnacle of Hulk storytelling. And then there's just been kind of like, couple minis.
It was only the one series between these two, though.
Yeah, the
Was
Donny
it
Cates.
one?
Yeah, Donny. There was just the Donny Cates series. That was it. And
there was the Mr. Fix-It series, and a couple minis.
Yeah, there was, but those aren't connected to the main. Like those are separate, right? Those are, think of those differently. They're very much playing into that world, that the Mr. Fix-It world, but that's not connected with the mainstream Hulk story. Yeah, you had a Donny Cates issue, and drawn by the guy who drew Invincible. I'm a terrible comic book podcaster because I cannot think of the name of this very mainstream artist who's beloved by a lot of people. And I thought I don't know, because I don't like his visual style, and which makes me the oddball out. Fully admit it, but never cared for it. But what I did not like about that is you had Al Ewing do 50 issues of really amazing stuff that also played into Peter David's run, that also played into Kirby's stuff. Right, it goes all the way back to the original stuff and loops up everything into one, in a way that was really neat. And then you have somebody come on and go, yeah, that was cool. Let's completely scrap that. And we don't care about that mythos anymore. I hate that Marvel does that so often now, that we are so dedicated to our own little, let's make something that gets stuck into a hardcover and we put on the shelf by itself, that everybody wants to do their version of the thing, right? Which they should put their mark on it. But the beauty of these characters and the beauty of these lengthy continuities is that it's a tapestry that's been woven, and you can pull a thread, right? Like, that is what is cool about, like, the best things about modern comics that are told, is these people who know the material, they know the mythos, and they know it well. When the rules, you can break them, which, again, back what we're talking about, this kind of conceptual continuity, is what makes absolute DC work. Right, is that they know the tapestry. They know how these things are woven, so they can pick and play with the things, but still make it part of the cohesive story. People don't do that with Marvel a lot of times, and they need to. It's a bad editorial choice. What the beauty of these characters is in the continuity, and when you're able to break the continuity, that makes it beautiful and special. And we see that time and time again. It's not a hard formula to understand, unless you're making a lot of money and you get to make that decision. So.
Yeah, I wasn't so taken by Natalie,
thanks, James,
the artist on the
on Hulk Volume 6.
On Hulk, yeah. I wasn't as taken from the first Philip Kennedy Johnson Hulk, so I didn't continue. with that. But as much of a Hulk fan as you are, Caleb, I'm in the dark about what you feel about certain arcs. I just don't know.
Okay.
So I was wondering where you stood on World War Hulk.
Love it.
You do? Okay.
Yeah. Greg Pak. I thought it was great. Again, different. I like that but it also humanized him. And I also understand the context of the time why they moved Hulk away, because at the same time they were doing Civil War and they were like, hey, let's get Hulk out of here because he would just kind of be a thorn in the side of everybody. Right. But I thought it was cool, and it gave us some amazing characters. It built upon the mythos of it. It added to what happened to him on Earth. He had something to miss, and we left it with Scar. Right, we get to see the Hulk have feelings, and it led to him coming back and just shattering the world. And going back and going after the Illuminati, and it just bore all of these new stories. And that's where I'm saying, like, you can have something that kind of breaks the mold and does some weird stuff, because they did that with Planet Hulk, and then brought it back and made World War Hulk be really cool. They could have done that with the Otley Cates run. Instead, they made him some type of weird mech warrior that didn't do anything.
That just seemed to me like I didn't even bother after reading the preview pages. I just knew it was like one of those things like The Revenant. Like, I don't care if it has a rap of being good, there's no way I'm enjoying it. And the other Hulk arc or arcs that I'm just wondering where you stand as he goes away and picks something up is, do you see Byrne into Al Milgrom into Peter David as one run, or does it really start with David?
I think those are okay. So those are two, for me, that's two separate questions.
Okay.
In the entire context of the history, I think that yes, like overall, like it is what you just said. It's Byrne into Milgrom, and I do think that they're playing on that story. And when you're able to look at that from where we are now, like 30,000 foot view, I think it's easier to see maybe than it was when it was coming out, which is true of a lot of things.
Yeah.
For my own reading experience, I read the David stuff first, and the David Hulk was my baseline for what Hulk was. Because that was the first stuff I read, right? That was when I started. Actually, that's not true. It might. No, it is true, right? The David stuff was the first stuff I read. I did not fall in love and become an Incredible Hulk fan until, of all things, I was reading Mark Waid's Invincible Hulk or whatever it was called.
Indestructible Hulk.
I read that and I'm like, I understand this character now. I understand a lot of cool things about this character. This is a lot more than just the stuff I've randomly read. And so I went back and started reading the Peter David stuff, and specifically started reading the Volume 2 stuff, where Peter David was writing. It kind of brought the new stuff out. And there is that really great arc called Return of the Monster, where it's Peter David and it's Abomination, and they just have this massive, it's Ramita or Junior, I think, and there's just massive fight. But it was from there that I went back and was like, all right, I need to go read some of these classic stories. So I would go back and read the Byrne stuff. I went back and checked out the Herb Trimpe drawn stuff, really got to understand the broad stuff, and getting into the Peter David stuff where, he took a left turn and gave us, gods and all these other weird stuff. Been a lot of iterations, but I think as far as the overall context to answer your question is both yes, but for me personally, no.
That's where I kind of come down to, where I do see it as a continuous, the Byrne issue is definitely the break, because, there's so many concepts that we deal with, mainly Gray Hulk from that point onward, as one, but it just felt that the musicality came in with David, and
that is true of a lot. A lot of David's work too. Just is the man is amazing at what he does, pulling the characters in and just make you care about, almost revitalizing and refurbishing them a little bit.
Certainly X Factor.
Yeah.
Well, some of those were nothing characters before then. There was no depth to Havoc. There was no depth to some of
Or
this.
Jamie Madrox.
Or Quicksilver for that matter.
Yeah.
It was all in his sister.
Peter David's Supergirl run for me is foundational for the way I appreciate Supergirl. I love Peter David's Supergirl.
Yeah, I struggle with that one because I do think it's very well written, but it's not my Kara or my Matrix into Kara.
Yeah, that's the
that
Matrix.
One I struggle.
Yeah,
it's like it's clearly well done. It's just not for me. You know. Yeah.
So interesting. Let me ask you a question too. Back to what you were asking about Byrne. Do you consider Peter David? Would he be your definitive Hulk writer, or would you say that was?
I would say I wouldn't necessarily say he would be my definitive Hulk writer, but I would say he would be my definitive Bruce Banner writer.
Okay.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, no, I think it is.
I think there's a lot of good Hulk and there's a lot of awful.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of how do you put this? Like waiting period, what's the term? I can't think of the term, but when somebody's in there until the A team takes over.
Oh yeah, like a transitionary.
Yeah, there's a particular term. I can't think of it right now. Placeholder. There's a lot of placeholder Hulk too.
Yeah. There's a lot of filler. The
70s. I mean, it's like the Southwest is so boring after a point, and it just doesn't feel like the same. It just doesn't feel like the same character that was in Defenders at the time, which was simple and fun.
Yeah.
So James here, mentions the way Peter David's been struggling with his health and healthcare costs for the last few years is criminal. Not Ed Brubaker's criminal, but like real life actual criminal with the amount of comics and money he made for Marvel and DC. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really unfortunate. And that seems to be the case. A lot of that generation and the generation before him and the generation before that, there's a lot of that. They made superhero comics. They made Marvel and DC comics what they are today. But, that period and that generation from I would say maybe the early 90s back, not including the Image team, just kind of got the shaft a lot of times. Or in a situation now where they're just not, they're not doing well. So that is unfortunate. But I know Daniel had a comment here because we brought up briefly Supergirl. There has been a new Supergirl series released. Yeah. I think was today.
I thought I would be reading it today.
Yeah, we were hoping. So have you folks read the first issue of the Supergirl comic?
Just so people know, we all get books from a particular service, and they've been very good over the last year or so about shipping stuff towards the beginning of the month. And it's the 21st, and we don't have ours. So that's why we haven't read Supergirl #1. You put it that way. But we will.
It also hasn't hit unless I haven't checked this week, but I don't think it's hit the DC app yet.
No, they've kind of gotten a bit lax on, because initially it was everything that was all in. And now it's like, they didn't have a couple.
They kind of wait.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that particular program is done. You were very good about all in hitting day and date.
Yeah. It was for me. It was a good time to shift over to reading digital comics, especially DC comics, considering how good they are. Because it's saving me a lot of money not having to buy every single issue of everything that I think is good over there, because it's fantastic.
Okay, so between tangents, we've swallowed up a lot of time. I know we all have a second book to talk about, so I want to get those in, but they're gonna have to be a bit more accelerated. So, Steve, another book that you're reading that you're enjoying.
So not a problem here. I mean, this book has a lot to it, but I think it's probably best for, just kind of a quick overview and have people who really want to read it to do so. And that is Lost Fantasy, put out by Image. It's another book by Kurt Pyers and Luca Casalanguida, who I like to say his last name because it's fun, Casalanguida. But basically these two were responsible for Indigo Children, if you remember that series that came out a couple of years ago. I talked about it a few times. Just really interesting, sort of, special children with powers, but there's more to it than just that these are children with powers. There's also a, like some kind of conspiracy behind them and something even greater in their purpose. Lost Fantasy kind of, it's in that same vein where there is, some greater purpose for, around the main characters, but also in the general story. So Kurt does set up the world very quickly. He talks about a character or person named Cyrus, who is basically a guardian of Terra, which is the world beneath our world. And in the 1860s, there's a breakthrough, and monsters, creatures, mythological beings sort of come into the real world, and Cyrus and some of his, other compatriots come into our world as well from Terra and, save the day. They actually build treaties following, the American Civil War and World War One, and they make treaties with people and governments to kind of basically say, hey, we want to make peace with this upper world. We're from Terra. We want to make sure that no matter what happens on your end, it's not having to deal with our crazy supernatural problems. And true to form, set up a world. Each one of Cyrus and his compatriots set up magic schools across the world so that people can learn how to defend themselves, but also to expand, create new generations of guardians for the world of Terra, but then also to watch the real world, or at least the upper world, to make sure that there's no incursions from the supernatural one. And in this book, we're introduced very early on to what is clearly a supernatural incursion of some sort that's very bloody and horrifying, encountering this little girl who's running for her life, and anybody that she's encountering is ripped to shreds. She ends up getting hit by a car, and the nice couple that accidentally ran her over take her to the hospital, where it's very clear that she's been touched by something supernatural. So of course this activates Cyrus's network of people across the globe, and he calls upon his one agent, who is a very special case, again, our special little boy, who's very powerful, probably doesn't know it yet, whatever. And that is the character of Henry Blackheart. So he sends him out to do some investigating into the woods where this girl was trying to escape from. He has two familiars that are just really cool dragons that kind of hang out with him, and they start investigating, and very quickly are attacked by a bunch of supernatural creatures that seem to be controlled by an outside force. They battle, they fight, everything's really great, and then he gets shot in the head by a sniper who's just hiding in the trees, and things fade to black. And that's where we're left in this first issue. That is not how I expected this issue to end. I expected it to be like, okay, super baddie, supernatural fight time, and then, more so setting it up for the next one. No, character is dead, or at least appears to be dead as we end that. Also, just so that for those of you who are interested, it is considered giant size, as it says in the corner. And that means that it also has an additional story. And that story happens to be Indigo Children. So if you are familiar with the Indigo Children, you're going to love this, because this has essentially one of the main characters there explaining who the Indigo Children are. So going back into time, into the beings that they were before coming to Earth. Very, very cool, interesting setup, and can't wait for issue number 2. So,
all right, cool.
Yeah. It also has one of my favorite letterers, Micah Myers. I always love his stuff, so he's in here as well. And colors are by Mark Dale, who does an amazing job, playing around with this concept here.
All right, cool. Yeah. All right, let's go over to Caleb. Caleb, what about you with another book?
Yeah, so I will say also Kurt Pyers wrote a really amazing book called Olympia that you should check out too. It's fun stuff. I checked out a new #1 from Image Comics called Fashion School Killer. I was a fashion school serial killer. I want this cover. I love that cover. I also love this cover, the main cover, but that cover that you're seeing on now, where the main character is shirtless and there is a skinless body behind her, is really metal and awesome. But the crux of this story is not complicated, right? It's fairly simple. The main character's name is Bethery, and she is a serial killer that is also a fashion designer. Specifically, she goes and she finds men who are people, not even just men, but she finds these people who are stalking women and beating them up and murdering them in alleyways and just bad people. So, and she murders them and she takes their skin and makes things out of them. But she also is a fashion designer. So she gets into fashion school and she gets there. And she's very much a loner, at least she wants to be. And then she meets a girl named Sophie who is just insistent on being lovely and kind of tries to break the ice with her, and does in ways that she can't control, and just is going to force her to be great. There's also other people at the school, very much a mean girls clique, right, who are just shitty, and she wants to murder them badly, and she has to make herself not. So in order to make herself avoid those impulses, let's go find bad people to kill, and then she soaks in their blood, because why not? Have a nice tub, fill it with some typo negative, and turn on some typo negative. Go for it. And that's just the life that she's living, and why not? And she even will sew little. Maybe if the attacker person had a tattoo that she likes, she cuts it out and puts it on the inside of her jacket, and then wears it to school is just kind of this thing that's going to beat her up. And she is going to beat the mean girls, damn it, by just being a better fashion designer than them. I don't know where this is going to go. I have no idea where issue 2 goes. I haven't read it yet. It looks great. I love the art on this. The art is by Daniel Hillard. The story itself is by Doug Wagner. Not really familiar with either of these two individuals and their work, but this is a fun story. And also, I'm a huge fan of the history of fashion in comics, just in general, especially when you get back to the heydays. Like, all of these artists that we know and love had to pay attention to fashion. It's great. Lots of good fashion stories. Fashion Beast, Alan Moore, if you want to go check that stuff out. So this is cool. Very much into it. Want to see where they go. And just again, body horror and murder and happy, talented serial killers, I guess. I don't know. It seems fun.
And on that note, of course, remember that Project One Way is making its comeback at the end of this month. I do not think they feature, skin dresses or serial killers, but maybe they will this time. It is on Hulu, so who knows?
Look, the old saying, love the skin you're in, is a great saying. It does not specify that it has to be your skin.
That actually is 2 books that you talked about where people are like wearing other people's skin. So both Incredible Hulk and I was a fashion designer serial killer.
And we've also mentioned Harrow County. So.
And Harrow County. Lots of people wearing lots of skin. Is there something we should talk about?
Resurrection Man, at least in one page, is real close to that. Yeah.
I have a
not an intended motif.
We're getting beneath the surface. It's not just skin deep.
Yeah.
Hey, Bill, what did you read this week?
My second book is nothing I thought it would be. Like, I did not think I would be talking about this book, but during Free Comic Book Day, one of the inexpensive bin purchases that I made were the 3 issues of Sectaurs, Warriors of Symbion. Now, just a little background. This comes from Nacelle, which is being published through Oni Press. Nacelle is the production company that created the toys that made us, the movies that made us, into Toy Shop Near You, Icons on Earth, a lot of documentary series, but also some original content. And they've branched into toys, and they've purchased the licenses of a number of effectively dead lines. So they picked up RoboForce, they picked up Sectaurs, they picked up Biker Mice from Mars, they picked up Power Lords, which I do have the first issue of here as well. And so they're creating their own Nacelle verse from these toy lines, and it's doing well enough that RoboForce just had its premiere on Tubi of an animated series, and the Biker Mice from Mars, the sales were robust enough that there's now an ongoing series springing from the miniseries that they had. But on to Sectaurs. So there's a really weird connection with Steve and I and Sectaurs. When we went to Heroes Con last year, for some reason, like again and again, we like encountered Sectaurs stuff. We encountered it in some of the local shops that we hit before the con. We ran into it again and again at the con, whether it was the Zika figures or the original Coleco figures. For some reason, I don't know what was in the water at that point, but that was our Sectaurs week. So some of this was like, ha ha ha, look, I got the Sectaurs miniseries. This turned out to be an absolute delight. An absolute delight. So as I said, Sectaurs was a toy line in 1985 from Coleco, which was not necessarily like a traditional action figure line. It only lasted the 1 year. There were a lot of really kind of cool concepts with Sectaurs. So it says Warriors of Symbion. So the planet Symbion initially was like an Earth-like planet. The scientists did a lot of genetic manipulation, and in the end, the surviving species were like these humanoid insect hybrids, the Sectaurs. And there's good Sectaurs and there's bad Sectaurs. So the good Sectaurs are part of the Shining Realm, which includes the main character, Prince Dargon. And there's the evil Sectaurs of the Dark Domain. And they're both after the same thing. The ancients of Symbion collected all the knowledge into an area called the Hive. And they're both, so it's like a Grayskull kind of situation. There's a lot of Masters of the Universe influences, let's put it that way, within these series. And there was an animated series that lasted 5 episodes because it was just like a 1 week run. So, again, you really have to like look at the footnotes to if you grew up at this time to even know about this stuff. So Nacelle published this series. Now the writer is Dennis Culver, kind of journeyman writer. Some of the DC stuff he did was Justice League Incarnate, Gotham Future State. He did the Unstoppable. Was that the name of it? Unstoppable Doom Patrol, the Dawn of DC.
I think so. Yeah.
So, a serviceable name, but, not one that would pop out in terms of prominence. Now, the artist, Ramon Box, is a Spanish artist who's been at it for like 25 years. His first published work was The Joker versus Mask, the Dark Horse Mask. Crossover, and he has a somewhat cartoonish style, and sometimes it doesn't exactly fit some of the material that he's had. Steve, I know you're a Valiant reader, and he was the artist on Roku.
Yes.
So,
okay.
Yeah. So he has a particularly, I would say, cartoonish, almost cartoonish old style. This fits Sectaurs perfectly. This fit this perfectly. So you can see here, I'm just going to go through this stuff really quickly. If you're watching the audio version, if you're watching the video version, if you're listening to the audio version, I'll do my best. So this is, basically the getting the band together sequence here. They know that they have to go to war with the dark forces, the forces of the Light Empire, and Prince Dargon is the untested ruler with the disappearance of his father. And so, Steve, if you can just progress here, this stuff looks like it comes right out of a 1980s comic book that was based on a toy line. It fits this stuff perfectly. The writing fits this stuff perfectly. It may have had an all ages tag on it, and I don't mean that as in any way as disparity.
Yeah.
That's a particular art in and of itself that I think is dying, And I think there should be more writers that are able to do this. And this is a very simple story through the 3 issues. It's the different forces of Sectaurs trying to find the hive. There's a little more intrigue. There's a husband and wife that rule the dark domain, and the wife is plotting against the husband, which gave it a little more energetic feel to a basic storyline like I'm providing here. But as you go through these images here, you'll see that this is classic 80s comic book stuff before things got grim and gritty. But it's done very, very well. Steve, if you can just keep going there with a couple of more pages. See, I mean, this, it screams 1985 licensed. It screams G.I. Joe or Transformers.
Well, yeah, it screams toy, and that's what I was going to say. It's toyetic.
Absolutely.
Like that my theory about what makes these things work is that his drawing style does look like action figures, right?
Yeah.
It is toyetic in that sense, and they should for this. Those covers look like Freddie Williams. Is that Freddie Williams drawing those covers?
No. These covers are, let me see here, Dustin Weaver.
Okay.
Yeah. Dustin Weaver did this. And then if you can go, Steve, you saw 1 through 3, they actually connect to this. Nice. Yeah. So
I do have a question. I know they don't. Yeah. I know they don't address it. But if they are insect human hybrids, why do the women have breasts?
Oh, Steve, you had to make it weird. I don't know.
That it doesn't make any sense, but it's fine. I know it's just the toy design. Yep. You can't make them too bizarre and out of there, but
nary a thorax among them.
Yeah,
just strange.
And one cool element of the original toys is, as you can see there, that so basically the more humanoid insect creatures, they biomesh with a more monstrous, traditionally insectous creature. Mm-hmm. So you see Dargon and with Dragonfly here. The original toys for Dragonfly and the counterpart toys were hand puppets. So you were actually make them, you kind of became that character when you play with them. Really nice, really neat conceit. But just
you can still see the toy cartoon or the toy commercials. I think they have them on YouTube.
And another thing that's really cool about one series of the toy commercials is they were serialized. They were 13-part story through a minute and 40-second commercials. Which told the basic story of the Sectaurs. Some really cool stuff, and just in an unabashed, fun, no nonsense manner, and from almost picking this up as a joke, I ended up to the point where I was actually looking at Sector toys prices.
That's a good feeling.
To be honest. So.
Well, I assume that we'll see them at Heroes Con. Maybe. Or maybe they'll all be sold out and it'll be like this, oh my gosh, the Sectaurs have really hit finally.
I have to say, I kind of mocked the Nacelle verse one shot. I thought, like, what are they doing? And I'm eating my words. I have to say that because this miniseries was so much fun, and everything creatively, every creative decision into this was right on the mark. Absolutely right on the mark. Love this.
Cool.
I don't know if you guys would like it, but I know dozens of other guys who would.
Yeah, I don't have the connection with the toy, so I don't know that I would grab. Like, if it's a good story, it's a good story. So, but I don't have the history with it that I think would give it. Like, it's kind of the same reason I like Gargoyles, right? Am I saying that Gargoyles is an amazing comic? No, it's serviceable, it's cool, but I've got a super huge connection with it.
Yeah.
So.
But you also have to understand, Caleb, I don't have any firsthand knowledge of this either. Yeah. I mean, I came up during that, got back into comics during that time, but it wasn't like I was buying G.I. Joe or Transformers or
fair,
any of those other stuff. But just the vibe that was around, you couldn't not experience it.
Okay.
And that sort of alignment of product, which is commercial and crass as hell, that so many cool elements it still came out of that. and there are lines of toys and storylines that I have tremendous fondness for.
Mhm.
Defenders of the Earth, Visionaries. I love that stuff. Maybe because they were like a little more geared to an old, someone a bit older like me. But just the 80s toy vibe that this had, it was celebratory. Oh, look at him.
Yeah, so James mentions here that he was obsessed with the toys as a boy, but they were unfortunately very crazy expensive in Brazil.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know a lot of the import stuff, whether it was Nintendo or Mega Drive or whatever, was wildly expensive in Brazil. But yeah, that's kind of amazing. I barely remember them, but that's just because in my house it was not allowed to even watch He-Man. I couldn't watch Thundercats, couldn't watch any of those things. I was allowed to have a couple He-Man figures, but Sectaurs would have looked too evil, and therefore would not be allowed in this house when I was growing up. So,
and look what happened. Now you're gay and you're wearing big Linda Richmond glasses.
Yeah. See, that's why.
If
I got to play with all the Sectaurs and all the Thundercats,
if they let you watch the goddamn Sectaurs and the He-Mans, you might have
a beautiful family right now. You'd have a lovely wife.
Oi! We should have let
2.5 children.
Should have let him watch the He-Man. Okay. We went to some weird places tonight.
I've missed you guys. I really have. I had a long day at work. The last hour and 50 some odd minutes have been fantastic to brighten my mood. I've missed you guys.
I have to say, Caleb, I had a relatively easy last 2 weeks at work. Relatively easy.
Send that to me, please.
Yeah, I wish. The only thing was the travel with the New York Transit strike.
Yeah.
Me who goes into New York at this point, not consistently, and 3 of the 5 days where the strike happened, I had to be in the city.
Yeah.
So
the strike is over now, right?
Yeah. It was over. They reached the settlement on Monday.
That's good.
No, they reached a settlement on Sunday night with the trains beginning again on Tuesday at 12:01.
Yeah, that's cool.
Which didn't help me. I had to take Amtrak, but I didn't pay for Amtrak, so I didn't care.
Nice.
Yeah. All right.
Awesome.
We're going to start wrapping this episode of the Comic Book Bears up. And as we head toward the end, we have 2 segments that we always get to. The first of which is something we call Geek Gets, where we show off things that are genre oriented that we got between the last episode and this episode. It's the kind of show and tell. Steve, do you have anything to show and tell in the Geek Get?
Not particularly a standard Geek Get, but I did want to show off the Mark Spears cover of Captain Planet #1. I didn't talk about this comic. I mean, we were talking about like 80s and early 90s nostalgia, toys and cartoons and whatnot. This kind of fits definitely into it. But Mark Spears, oh my God, this man, just has a beautiful way of providing photorealistic artwork. You can check out his Mark Spears Monsters series right now, which I think #1 is now in its 5th printing. But this is a absolutely gorgeous Captain Planet. This oh boy. Anyway, we were trying to figure out who was using as a life model, but honestly, I don't mind.
If somebody else can figure that out, send it to us because now we're curious.
Okay.
Identify this man so we can find his Instagram and we're OnlyFans.
All right, over to you, Caleb. What do you have? In terms of I actually have a couple things. I sent Steve a couple pictures, but first, I got and I got this today, the 6th or the 5th volume of the Dark Horse Universe of Black Hammer hardcover. Got all the rest of them. They make a beautiful line on the shelf. These are great stories. Go check that out. Some of my favorite musicians are from a band called Guns N' Roses. Some of those same musicians were in a band called Velvet Revolver, which I'm a huge fan of. Picked up that vinyl. But the main thing, the thing that really sets it off in Big Geek Get is not necessarily a Geek Get that I got for myself. It's a Geek Get I got from my husband, which is the new Sleep Token album, Even in Arcadia. My husband's not a fanatic like I am. My husband doesn't like obsess about things and have to go figure out and listen to them and hear every word. He doesn't find a band and just dive into everything. He heard this album and he looked at me. He said, I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, this is my favorite album of the year. Has got almost every song memorized. We cannot get in the car without him saying, turn it on. I walk in, he's playing the vinyl today. Just he loves this album and obsesses on it. And I love it. I love it because I get to see him just like be me, like do the thing that I do most of the time. And that's a fun thing to see. This album is spectacular. I love this band. I think they're a fantastic band. I love that they are multi-genre. I love that they are not metal, they're not R&B, and they're all of those things at the same time. I think they do some really cool things. And they are topping the Billboard charts right now, which in 2 different countries, which I think is pretty cool for a band because we don't see that too often, at least not metal bands, not very often, unless, we also saw that with Ghost.
At this point, let's just say rock bands.
Yeah.
Every
once in a while an alternative band will do it, but yeah, you don't see rock bands on that. And for all the people who shit on them, because they don't fit into metal or whatever, number one, do you know what you call a genre that does not evolve over time? You call that a dead genre. And I don't want metal to die. I don't want rock to die. So I like that they're expanding it. I like that they're bringing in new audiences. And this is just a beautiful orchestration of sounds. I don't know how else to put it. So go listen to it if you haven't.
Okay, my music take 2. My geekettes are also music oriented. So I mentioned that I was going into the New York City for some concerts. One of the ones that I went to was Fontaine's DC, Irish band that are on their 4th album. This is it, Romance. Came out in 2024, but there is a deluxe edition which added a single that they recorded after the album was released. So that's the digital version that you can get. But the vinyl has the original tracks. This is a bit of a departure from their first 3 albums, a lot less abrasive. And, at least in the terms of tracks like Starburster and Desire, actual radio play.
Yeah, Starburst is a great song. It's a great song.
And the one thing that was really cool was you see the color of my hair. There were other guys like me seeing this band of Irishmen that are in their 20s, still in their 20s. So Romance by Fontaine's DC. And my other, not necessarily music, music, it has to be because of the source of this, but I would argue that one of the original Bear icons in culture was Sebastian Cabot, who played Mr. French from Family Affair. And in the, I want to say 67, I'm going to peg this at 67. He put out an album, Sebastian Cabot, Actor, a dramatic reading with music, Bob Dylan, Poet. So the first I ever got wind of this was in the very late 80s. Rhino had a series called Golden Throats, which was really where the Shatner stuff, the Mr. Tambourine Man and other recordings really came into prominence. If you can find the Golden Throat stuff, it's amazing compilations. Before you die, you have to hear Mae West sing Twist and Shout. You just have to. There's some really nuts things on there, which is all Golden Throats is like actors, people for something other than music, performing music. So one of the tracks on there was Like a Rolling Stone by Sebastian Cabot. So this is how I knew about it. I've known of this album, but I've never seen a copy of this. In 30 Rock in New York City, there's a record store called Rough Trade, which is, has lineage to the London independent record scene. Let's just put it that way. And they opened up a downstairs, which is about 4 times the size of the upstairs, and with a really robust used section. And that's where I got this. So Sebastian Cabot, Actor, Bob Dylan, Poet. Like a Rolling Stone. You have to hear that.
Wild. Daniel had to comment here. I wish I could relax as fully as Minerva has been this entire podcast. Absolutely. She is. And the way she just sleeps this way, like her ear constantly draped over.
Find something to drape off of. It's a hound dog thing.
I'll be seeing Minerva in a month, and she'll be terrified.
No,
I know that's a sad
Yeah.
thing. She's
That's
she's
a
like
sad
she's met Bill, I think now like 3 times, and every time
Terrified.
she's just terrified.
But I don't take it personally because she's terrified of other men,
Yeah.
apart from
Yeah,
the 2 daddies.
absolutely.
Take
And meanwhile,
cookies.
you've also got to fend off Phoebe because she's constantly climbing all over you. So
Yeah. I don't mind Phoebe.
Phoebe's
I don't mind Phoebe at all.
She's been
Okay.
sleeping at my feet this whole time too,
Yeah.
and then of course.
All right, so
you know,
we're headed towards the very end of our show, and when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week. In the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him. And we do something very similar to that, where we woof at something which may be comic book or comic book related, but it also may be a TV program, something involved with, music again, charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start, as I always do, with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
My woof of the week goes out to Gundam G Cooks. Yes, that's how it's being pronounced on the show. I don't understand why, but it is absolutely fantastic. It's airing on Amazon Prime of all places. Brand new anime series. It's airing in multiple countries at the same time. This is an alternate reality version of the Gundam universe. Completely new alternate reality where in the second episode they actually go all the way back to the original first episode of Mobile Suit Gundam. And instead of, the usual suspects going and attacking the side where Amuro lives, and then Amuro finds the Gundam and gets in it and, saves the day. This time around, it's actually Char who goes into the side, takes the Gundam, and kills everybody. So this takes place years afterwards, after Earth has lost the war and Zeon has actually won. And it's really cool. It's, a couple teenagers who just have the ability to pilot Gundams, who happen to be new types, and they like to battle underground in the side. It's fantastic. It's really cool. It does all the nerdy shit. If you're a big fan of Gundam, like all these characters pop up that you're like, that's not what they did. But it's gorgeous, beautiful. The music's great. Lots of fun. There's a little bit of queerness in it, which is always nice. And really emotional. It's good old fashioned Gundam. Anyway.
All right, cool. Over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your woof of the week?
So my woof of the week is also musical. It goes out to a new album that I was not expecting to gravitate towards as much as I did, and I absolutely fell in love with this thing. And this might be one of my favorite albums of the year, and that's the new album by Peter Murphy. The album is called Silver Shade. Bill can probably wax poetic about Peter Murphy ad nauseum and give you way more detail or information about him and his music and the era that scene than I ever could. And he should do that at some point. I'm a tangential fan of Peter Murphy. I like this era of music. I like a lot of the songs. There are some songs that are great. Not overall, just like never been in love with him or somebody that I just need to go collect all their stuff. Fantastic musician. Fine. I enjoy a lot of stuff. I saw this pop up and I'm like, oh, Peter Murphy's got a new album. Let me go listen to it. This album is amazing. It's produced by Youth, which this is their second thing together, apparently. But Peter Murphy tapped into some friends of his, folks like Trent Reznor and even Boy George, to come in here and to help make these tracks and to work on things with them. This album is mind blowing. It reminds me a lot, honestly, of Bowie's Dark Star album. They
That's
knew
fair.
Yeah,
I've not thought of that comparison, and I think that's a very fair comparison.
So I was talking to our buddy Vince Bonavilla about this too, and I said the same thing to them, and he was like, I almost wanted to reach through the phone and slap you because that's stupid. And then I went and listened to the album, and it's apt. And so I'm glad that two people that I know that I have a lot of respect for because of their musical tastes agree with me on that. They know what to do with Peter Murphy's voice in this. It is aged in a wonderful way. They take this kind of they take the sound that Peter Murphy is known for, right? And they give it a little bit of an industrial feel, which is connective to what it is. I mean, there's that fits in well. And then they play into the voice that he has now. And I think it's just a stunning piece of work. The album is pre-ordered. When it comes out on vinyl, I'll get it. It is beautiful. It is a beautiful album, and just heartbreaking and breathtaking, and just it is exactly what this album needed to be. And for me, it's my favorite Peter Murphy stuff. So, but you get a lot of people when they've been around forever. They put out another album that sounds like their last 5 albums or that kind of thing. That is not what this is at all. It is both. You will recognize it as Peter Murphy, but it is wholly different, and it's something that is an evolution of his sound in a really, really great way. And the song that him and Trent Reznor did is a fucking banger, like just absolute banger.
Yeah, I do enjoy this. I'm not the biggest fan of his solo stuff. I'm the emphasis track guy. I'm the cut you up guy. I think there's some good singles in the mix, but I was really impressed with this album, especially Let the Flowers Grow with Boy George. I mean, I'm not going to say necessarily that these are 2 voices I wouldn't put together, but these are 2 personalities I wouldn't normally put together, and they blend beautifully on that track. Absolutely beautifully on that track. And I do think this is definitely going to make me pursue Lion, which is the first
Youth album.
The first, and for people who don't know who Youth is, he's the bass player for Killing Joke, but he's also had basically a parallel career as a producer, and from everybody, literally everybody, from really abrasive grindcore acts to Paul McCartney. And I want to listen to that. I always tell people, if you listen to Bauhaus, you have to listen to the last album, the 2008 Go Away White, because it's on par with the other stuff, and this feels like that. And I would definitely recommend Caleb also check out Go Away White, which was the final, which was the Bauhaus reunion and final album.
I've listened to it all the way through. I need to go back and revisit it now. But also, you mentioned "Cut You Up." That's my favorite Peter Murphy song. I think that is a wonderful song. I've been trying to play it on the bass. So. I'll play along with it.
Yeah, like I'm the Cut You Up. I'm the Sweetest Drop.
Yep.
I'm the All Night Long. I'm the emphasis track guy when it comes to the solo stuff. But definitely I will. You can add my voice to the calls for admiration to this.
Yeah, it's such a good album, and I've sent it to a bunch of people, and they're all like, "Holy shit!" Like this is. Like all of my friends who are like industrial metal dudes are just like eating this up, and I love it.
Yeah. Okay, so for my Wolf of the Week, I'm also going the music route, but different. Oh, who's that?
Oh no, that's Aster being whiny.
Okay, Aster, we're gonna let your daddy go in a couple seconds here. But for my Wolf of the Week, I'm going to the Bruce Springsteen EP, Land of Hope and Dreams. And the story behind this is the ultimate trolling. Bruce Springsteen started his tour in Europe in Manchester, UK, gave a speech that was very critical of the current administration. And of course, the Cittadini freaked the fuck out about it. And there's been insane calls for censure and keeping him out of the country and all that shit that you always hear about, everything with the fake clutch the pearls outrage from the right. And in a unprecedented and surprise move, he released this 6-track EP from that show just 7 days ago. Today it's digital only at this point. It's streaming only. I'm sure there's going to be some kind of physical release later, but it's 4 tracks of songs, including the title track "Land of Hope and Dreams," "City in Ruins," which is a beautiful song about post 9/11 New York and Asbury Park, basically the entire tri-state area. Cover of Bob Dylan's Chimes of Freedom, but you also have his speeches before Land of Hope and Dream and the speech before My City in Ruins. And I'm just going to say, this is America. We have no kings, but we do have a boss. So, and any artists out there, keep speaking up.
Yep. Oh man, now they've got Eddie Vedder on board, and it's like, am I obligated to go listen to Pearl Jam now? I don't want to, but Eddie Vedder.
If you can fucking listen to Chinese Democracy, you can listen to 10.
I'm fair.
There you go.
Christ, yeah.
He's gonna pull that out anytime that he wants to question your taste. Oh, is this like that Chinese Democracy stuff that you like so much?
I like a couple songs. I want it noted. I'm not saying it's a great album.
It's your favorite album. What are you talking about?
That are good on that album.
And with this reaction here, I'm sorry, MAGA, your music sucks. We got all the good ones. We got all the good ones. All the good ones. All right. So we're wrapping this episode up. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on most of the social media outlets as Comic Book Bears, save for Facebook, where we are Comic Book Bears podcast. If you want to listen to us, you can download us through Apple Podcasts, listen to us on Spotify and many of the other podcatching platforms. Sorry, folks, it's 11:47 p.m. at night, and the tongue is I'm not going to say anything. But things aren't working like they should. Let's just put it that way. If you joined us tonight through Facebook Live, thank you. If you watched us through YouTube Live, thank you. If you're watching us delayed on YouTube, thank you. Please like and subscribe. Please leave a good review if you enjoyed what you were seeing or listening on those resources. And we'll be back in about 2 weeks. So until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
If you're listening to the audio version, you're going to hear a woof and an explosion. We'll be back again in 2 weeks. Take care.
Woof.